Pandemic planning in the OPS has been underway for several years already.
It's important that government demonstrate leadership, not just within government, but outside to the private sector, to the broader public sector, and our preparedness hopefully will inspire preparedness in those areas too. We actually started about 2 years ago, giving ministries some, I think, basic direction on preparing for a pandemic type emergency. And ministries have been dealing with those issues. And there are issues like ensuring that you have a backup person for all the key personnel in your ministry and that there's proper training in place. But we now need to be more direct in our planning. So what we've done is we've worked with a team of excellent experts from across our own organization and developed a precise planning guide. And we've now released that to the ministries. We've built some workbooks and training materials to go with it. Ministries are in the process of establishing pandemic planning teams. And these teams, while we have about a 2-year time horizon for the basic planning to be in place, the reality is these teams will be an ongoing phenomena in ministries for many, many years to come, essentially until we've dealt with the pandemic emergency. So pandemic planning now becomes part of the ministry's planning culture. It's something that they have to pay attention to as part of their normal business practice. We have been working with the bargaining agents. We've kept them updated on the planning activity. We've had some excellent commentary and input from several of the bargaining agents on our planning guides and our workbook materials. But in addition to that, the planning, the guide, the materials hopefully will also inspire employees to do some personal planning and family planning, and consequently the more broadly that planning occurs, the better all of Ontario will be to deal with a pandemic when it arrives.
Making preparations in the workplace is one important way we can reduce the effects of a pandemic. But there are also things you can do at home to protect yourself and your family.
An individual can prepare for a pandemic through a number of ways. Firstly, they need to be healthy before a pandemic. That's the best way to survive a pandemic. When the pandemic does arrive, we need to have an emergency kit because provisions may be difficult to obtain. So having an emergency kit for a pandemic would be no different from having an emergency kit for situations where there is a blackout, there is a flood, where you're unable to get provisions. This emergency kit would include things like some food, some non-perishable food, a flashlight, and some candles, blankets, all sorts of things that would constitute an emergency kit for maybe a week.
It will happen. We know that influenza pandemics have occurred periodically over the last millennia. Usually 2 to 3 times per century you will get an influenza pandemic. There were 3 influenza pandemics in the last century. It's been 40 years now since our last influenza pandemic, so just by statistics we're due for a pandemic. So it will happen. When will it happen? Well, nobody knows. That's the crystal ball question. But it will happen. How severe will it be? That's another crystal ball question. We really won't know until we get there. So we are planning for the worst and hoping for the best.